on three. 1, 2, 3.
Win!
The alley-oop!
Hello, Saints fans. Welcome to the Coaches Show. This is your show, an in-depth analysis of St. Martin's Volleyball, alongside the new head coach, St. Martin's Saints, Haley Domeck. And Coach, as you make your entrance into Lacey, what has stood out through the process of coming here and being ingrained in the community? What is some of the key highlights that stand out?
I think it's really just what a welcoming community it is. From my first moments on campus during the interview process to the first practices to moving into a new office, all of those pieces, it's really just the people make the place. And so we have such a great community, such a fantastic group of young women on the team that it just makes the whole experience so much fun.
So fun, so welcoming, and as far as getting ingrained in the St. Martin's community, it begins with how it all began. Where did that love for volleyball all give birth?
Yeah, I think for me, my family, we always did athletics. I grew up playing basketball, soccer, doing track, and then volleyball kind of came in when I had a soccer injury. And for me, it started because my mom was a volleyball player. And so it was something that I had always been around, but hadn't really given it a go. And for me, it was love at first play, I guess, would be the best phrasing. And so it's just such a unique sport, and one that you can really focus on the team aspect on the court, but then also be ultra competitive on the court. And so I think for me, it was those pieces going hand in hand.
Yeah, great intermixing of both individual competitiveness and also working together as a team.
Yep.
But you talk about that change and what stood out next in that journey. Obviously, HPU, huge part of it, but what was the journey to get there?
Yeah, for me, it ironically started when my college coach came to watch my club teammate play volleyball. And instead of recruiting her, he ended up reaching out to me. And I remember I was in the midst of recruiting, going on all the different college visits, and it ended up being between HPU and University of Rhode Island. And we went out on my visit, and I remember my mom saying, you're probably not going to go to school here, so let's make a vacation of this week. So we took a week off of school, hung out in Hawaii, and I ended up going there. I loved the team. I loved the professors, loved the opportunity to compete as a Division II athlete, and really the balance that brings while still competing at a really high level. And so for me, it was just a great fit to kind of get to know my coach with a little less pressure, because he was also recruiting a teammate, but then to step in and really enjoy and love going to school in Hawaii.
And what is that experience like compared to being here in the lower 48?
A little bit drier, a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
I remember first practice going in as a freshman, and we had no AC in the gym. And growing up in Washington, we all know the gyms are fairly temperate. You might end up on a little bit on the colder side of things. And so that was probably one of the warmest practices of my life. But it was a really cool experience to really immerse yourself in a different culture and in a place where there's so much history that we don't really experience on the mainland. And so for me, it was just a really cool cultural experience as well.
Wow, what a time, what a journey for you at HPU, Coach Domeck. And then afterwards, then came the lens from player to coach. What stood out from that move?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this as a team this week, the shift from player to coach really forces you to know your game at a whole nother level, because it's one thing to be able to perform an athletic skill yourself, but then to be able to teach that to someone else is a whole different type of conversation. And so that sort of switch, also more of a focus on the cultural side of things. How do we want a program to be known? How do we want to treat each other in the gym, outside the gym? All of those types of pieces I think really became a focus for me as a coach as well. And then also just the recruiting side of things. You don't recruit as a student athlete, you are recruited. And so how do you kind of go about recruiting and really get buy-in from recruits when you're going through that process?
And it is a long, drawn-out process to find the proper talent that you're looking for. And it begins with your first head coaching role over in Linfield. What stands out about those 4 years leading Linfield?
Yeah, I think it was really the transformation from the student athlete experience standpoint, where when I came in, no one could really answer the cultural questions for me. And so by the time I left, I remember talking with some of the student athletes who were still in the program, and they were like, we love the girls in the program. And kind of like the capstone for me was my last year there. I had two going to be seniors come in who were planning to graduate early, and they started crying in preseason, and I was like, oh no, here we go. What's going on? How can we help? How can we support? And it was, I don't want to leave. I don't want to graduate early. I want to stay and play my last year of eligibility. And so for me as a coach, that was a really big win. And really getting the team to the point where it was a phenomenal group of young women who were really driven on the court and in the classroom. And I think that was a huge turning point for me in terms of coaching.
Yeah, great turning stage coaching in the Northwest Conference. And then moving on to St. Mary's Beach Volleyball, a little bit of a different angle as far as coaching. What are some of the differences between indoor and beach?
One of the big ones is you kind of are using tennis rules, if you will. So you can't coach your student athletes when competition's happening unless you're switching sides of the court or the student athletes call a timeout. Those are the only times you can really coach them. So for me, I've been told that I coach kind of like a basketball coach. I like to be engaged. I like to be moving. I can't just sit down. That's really hard for me. And so I think that's a big piece of the beach game. But then also, too, it's a different strategy having only 2 people on the court versus 6 people, and different shot selection that you're talking through with them, different defensive schemes that you're talking through. So really it's a whole new game. And so I think for me it was really fun to get to be back in outdoors, because that was my first college coaching job, was a focus on the beach side of the game. And so it was kind of a nice throwback to that, if you will, but then also really missing the indoor side of things.
Man, the indoor fix is being in place with being here in Lacey. But for you, Coach, a lot of players, coaches, mentors that have breathed life into your playing and coaching career. Who are some of the key figures that come to mind?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is, again, my mom. She was my high school coach. She coached my sisters in club. She was my assistant coach at Linfield. And so it's been a really cool development for our relationship in the volleyball gym and then off the court as well. Just a great way to kind of build that relationship. I think as well as my college coach, Coach Capus, and then also Coach Kahala. And they were both huge in my development as a student athlete in the NCAA world. And then also when I was at Seattle Pacific, Abby Wright was huge in terms of teaching me how to teach culture and how to get buy-in from a group of student athletes. And then also you always have to go back to that person who gave you the first kind of break, and that was Coach White at UNA. And it's always, okay, who's going to take a chance on a first-year college coach as an assistant? So that was huge for me too.
A great way to get yourself into the journey. Now, a look ahead, obviously, fall long ways away would seem, but before you know it, we'll be heading into the heart of play in GNAC. What are going to be some of the key pointers that you want to emphasize with your first year coaching the Saints?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about this in the spring, is taking care of the little things and being confident and having that confidence. We talked a lot about it's confidence over cockiness. And so having the confidence in yourself that when you do step into the gym, you can get the job done, but having that humble confidence is huge. And then I think we're really going to be heavily relying on our returners to come in and make an impact and really develop culture and really set the standard for what it means to be a Saint. And then also looking at some of our incoming freshmen to be able to step up and really make an impact right away. We've had some injuries at the setting position. We graduated libero, we graduated a middle. So how are people going to kind of fill those roles and really rise to the occasion with those opportunities that they're given?
Who do you expect is going to have a big year?
I think we could see a lot from our outsides, whether that's Emily or Emmy, Layla, and Maddie. I think could all be really strong contenders, both on the outside and the right side. Kingsley is also a really strong right side for us as well. And then looking ahead to the middle, I think Zoe's set herself up really well to kind of step up into a leadership role, especially in the middle, kind of being the captain, if you will, of that like front row blocking scheme. In the back row, we have a lot of depth from Tiffany coming back, Mia, and Tahani all coming back. And so how does that look for us with them coming in and really being strong anchors in that defense as well? And then kind of how does Danny fit into things as a middle or a right side? And so I think we have a lot of opportunity, and I know I just listed almost everybody who's on the spring roster, but
you love your team.
Yes, I think that they're a great group, and I think that they're going to really force each other to get better and challenge each other to get better in practices, and that's always a good thing.
A lot of ironing, sharpening iron in towards GNAC season. And for you, about this community in particular, why St. Martin's?
I think coming on campus during the interviews, it was clear that the student athletes, the fact that none of them entered the portal, I think is absolutely huge. It really shows that they have a heart for this community, a heart for the university, and a heart for the program. And I think that that's the type of buy-in that you can't artificially create in a first year. And so the fact that that happened, I think, speaks volumes about the university and the athletics program. It's also kind of a homecoming. We've played at St. Martin's when I was at Linfield. I played here when I was a senior in college, and so it's always been a school that I've known about. My mom and sister won a state championship here, so it's something that I've always been familiar with. And it really was just a really natural transition getting to be back in the state of Washington, where I'm from, at a school with really challenging academics, dedicated student athletes, and a huge support system kind of across campus.
A lot of important figures in the St. Martin's community, including the athletic director, Teresa Hansen. How big of a supporter has she been for your first year?
She's been absolutely instrumental. I think when I was in the interview process, her professionalism, her preparedness, her transparency were all pieces that really drew me to the job as well. I think that she's a phenomenal leader and really helping to poise the Saints athletic programs for a ton of future success, and that's really exciting to see.
Now, you talk about future success. What are you looking for out of this season in your first year?
Yeah, I think that we have the pieces to be really competitive in GNAC play. I think that if we can pull together as a unit and really play together as 6, 8, 10, however many rostered individuals we have on the team, that we are setting ourselves really well for success in the GNAC and in preseason play as well.
See what happens come September for the St. Martin's volleyball team coming up this fall. That's all the time that we have for the Coaches Show. For head coach Haley Domeck, I'm DeBock saying so long and take care. And as always, it's a great day to be a Saint.